kids cardiac. Catch me in the muni where the party at. Dog pound, turn up with the elf up on my starter cap. Brought him back, boy, we from the land and we proud of that. Louder man, front to the back, here we go, I got him shouting that. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go, brownies. Stand up. Here we go, brownies. Let's go. Game on the line, Joe Thomas, I promise. Jim Brown running through opponents, how I got this. I return like Josh Cripps. Hand for the mini, got the dog pound jumping. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go, brownies. Stand up. Here we go, brownies. Let's go.
Cleveland! This is for you!
Here we go, Brownies Nations. We are here with Larry Lorello at Huntington Field to talk about Here We Go Brownies wine and all the other amazing wines at Lorello Vineyards.
Yeah, I just want to tell all of you guys, it's harvest season right now. We just started with some of the whites, and reds will be coming in next. Stop out at the winery, all the wineries out in Northeast Ohio for to check out all the harvest and what we're doing out there. It's a really good time right now.
Here we go, Brownies. Here we go.
Here we go.
Woof, woof.
Woof, woof.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. I'm Allie Ellery, coming at you live from Pensacola, Florida. And joined with me, as always, we've got Dustin out in Cleveland, Ohio. Dustin, how are you?
You know what? You didn't say beautiful, Cleveland, Ohio. But you know what? It isn't beautiful today, and I'm glad you didn't say beautiful. So, but it was. 3 days ago, this place was 73 degrees. I can't make this up. 73 degrees. I believe the current temperature outside is 35. It was 25 earlier. And then yesterday, an asteroid at 45,000 miles an hour and 6 tons decides to wake up everybody or on their way to work with a boom. And I'm like, where the hell do I live? Like what? Like what? That's like 72 hours, like from like super warm, super cold, and then an asteroid. Now, here's the crazy. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, it's crazy. I was out in Vegas early part of last week, came back here to Florida, and then I actually flew home to Ohio. I was there for a couple of days. And on Saturday, I believe it was Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember, I'm out in the driveway playing basketball with my little cousins in a t-shirt. The next day I'm boarding a plane and it's snowing. So I am, I don't know.
You got a little taste of it. I like that.
Yeah, not fun. I didn't pack for that. I'm in like 15 different time zones in the matter of like 4 days. So I don't know what day it is, what time it is. And my allergies are just crazy through all of it. But I'm happy to be here and happy to be talking about the Cleveland Browns. So let's get into it, Dustin. So obviously I wasn't here last week. I was in Vegas, as I just mentioned. So I want to run through all of the free agent signings. But before we do, just a couple of noteworthy things that have happened really in the past, little bit, past 4 hours or so. The most recent being that the Browns just signed to a 1-year contract, AJ Epinesa. He's a defensive end that came out of Buffalo. He's been with the Bills since 2020 to 2025. Guys, I remember him coming out of Iowa. He was a second-round pick in 2020 by the Bills. I really like this guy coming out of the draft. I'm excited about this. I think that he fills a need as a rotational piece, opposite Miles, and you like what you have there in Isaiah McGuire and Alex Wright, but this brings, a rotational piece there, somebody that can get after the quarterback. His career stats here: 135 tackles, 24 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, 1 defensive touchdown, 4 interceptions, 21 pass deflections. So, he's a guy. He's 27 years old, fairly high upside. I like this fit in this defense.
Yeah, real quick, 91 games of experience. So he has game day experience, like you said, and games are won in the trenches on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. So adding just more depth to the defensive line and rotation, I think, is a key, and we'll get into the other 2 players as well that were today. But I think anytime you can add depth to your defense or offensive line, you're doing a service to your football team, because as we know, one freak accident on the line, now you're down a guy. If you don't have a good rotation, now you have a hole over there, and it exposes that side of the defensive line. So yes, love this move. Again, $5 million or incentives up to $5 million. So also affordable, and a guy that's got 91 games. I'm in.
Yeah, I like it. Also, the Browns do sign safety / special teamer Daniel Thomas to a 2-year deal. Again, depth depth piece there. I always want to have more guys, special team aces. I think that's huge. But the one thing I want to get to before we really open things up and talk free agency is that the Browns submitted a rule that would allow teams to trade draft picks 5 years out instead of 3. So this just was reported by Adam Schefter about half hour ago.
That's news I did not know because I was dealing with the dog. Okay, got it.
Proposal summary here. By Cleveland to allow draft selections to be traded up to 5 seasons in the future by Pittsburgh to make permanent the change implemented during the 2025 season that permits clubs to have one video or phone call with no more than 5 prospective unrestricted free agents during the 2-day negotiation period and permit clubs to make travel arrangements with such players upon agreeing to terms. So then Cleveland says, and we'd like to allow selections up to 5 years. I mean, can you imagine instead of, giving 3 firsts to Houston for Deshaun Watson, they gave 5?
Okay.
No thanks.
Okay, first of all, makes me nervous while they're asking for that. That's my first thing. Why are we asking for 5 years? Right? But I sometimes feel like Andrew Berry is dealt a hand that you think he can't manage. I sometimes think he's playing chess while others are playing checkers. And I just feel like he manipulates the draft in a good way. Like he uses it to his advantage. And then everybody was freaking out, and we'll get into this about how the Browns were out of money now that free agency was over. And then the NFL said, oh, hang on a minute. We got $18 million of an insurance policy almost from Deshaun Watson to add to your cap this year. So, again, I don't know why he's asking for 5 years. I mean, unless they're making a trade with the Los Angeles Raiders for 4 first-round draft picks for Mendoza, I don't know why you would be making
No, thank you. Listen, I don't know. I'm sure more will come of this.
There is some satire and sarcasm involved in my
certainly. But I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting. I guess just more optionality. I guess more. Just leverage, more convenience, more options for clubs to be able.
Let me ask you this: do you know what the rule is in the other sports, like the NBA?
NBA. Off the top of my head, I don't know. Let me see if I can pull it up.
I'm wondering if by doing that, the NFL would be setting a precedent, if that makes sense, where you can trade out picks further than 3 years. Or maybe Andrew Berry is saying, hey, look, other leagues do this. Why isn't the NFL? Let's see what the owners think.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. And I'm, of course, Google's not helping me. But maybe when we're doing ad reads or something, I'll see if I can pull that up. Because, yeah, that's an interesting thought. Just reported the Browns have agreed to terms with former Ravens wide receiver Tylan Wallace. Mary Kay
wow, that's new.
He's 26, set to reunite with Todd Monken. He was a 4th-round pick in 2021. He was more of a special teams guy than a true receiver. But I was hopeful that they would add somebody like that. Somebody that can come in and get you a few catches certainly throughout the season, but really be more of a special teams guy. And I don't know a ton about Tylan Wallace, but I do remember him being on Ravens special teams and being, pretty dangerous. He's a name that sticks out in my head, but, just reading this at face value, I'm like, okay, cool. I think that makes sense there. So I'm just going to keep trying to refresh my Twitter here, see if anything else.
I was just going to say, I'm literally looking here and all of a sudden, boom, now there's a wide receiver here. That's crazy.
Yeah. So a couple of things there. Let's see. All right, let's go through. Obviously, I wasn't here last week, so just want to run through the other free agent signings, and then we'll give our takes on it, Dustin. But just to start, they started with Zion Johnson, the guard from the Chargers. Then they go get Elton Jenkins on a 2-year deal from the Packers. Really, I mean, those 2 signings back to back make you think, wow, okay, they're really taking this seriously, trying to fill up the trenches, figuring out this offensive line, pretty much indicating that they're going to be taking a tackle at some point, probably hopefully in the 1st round. Quincy Williams makes a ton of sense. That's not a huge shock. The linebacker from the Jets really fits with what Rudy wants to do on the defensive side of the ball. They bring back Tevin Jenkins on a 1-year deal. They bring back Corey Bojorquez. Got some thoughts on that one, but hopefully he can get it figured out this year. Jack Stoll, the tight end from the Saints, on a 1-year deal, more of a blocking guy, and that's just exactly what you need. Allowing Harold Fannin Jr. to be that pass catching tight end, bringing in somebody that can, block a little bit more and kind of run some heavy schemes. D'Angelo Ross, the corner or they re-signed D'Angelo Ross, the corner, Trey Avery, and then Kalia Davis, the defensive lineman from San Francisco. So, I mean, overall, like, you don't look at those names and think, wow, they made some splashes, because, I mean, I don't think any of us really expected them to do that or be able to do that. But the first two signings, Zion Johnson, Elton Jenkins, I mean, two that I'm excited about. High upside, Zion Johnson, 3 years, 49. 3 years, 49. Elton Jenkins, 2 years, 24. Elton Jenkins, he's moved around the offensive line quite a bit. Best years at center. So, I mean, that gives you some hope and optimism. Also has played guard. So he's also played tackle. I think more likely than not, you'll see him on the interior. Zion Johnson, former first-round pick from the Chargers. He's been at, I believe, right guard throughout most of his career. So, again, indicating that they will be taking a tackle at some point, investing heavily into that. Obviously, the trade for Titus Howard, we do know about that, but they've got to figure out left tackle. I mean, that's the big thing here.
Yeah, and you know what I love about this? Again, we know what Andrew Berry likes. He likes to get younger if he can. Yeah. The offensive lineman, he basically shifted age by about 5 to 6 years. Like, we got younger as an offensive line. So that's a good thing. And the reason I say that in a lot of ways is, I mean, I'm going to miss Wyatt Teller and all the great things he did here. But as we know, just like our own selves, as we get older, we have an injury, it takes longer to heal, all those things, right? So when you can bring in guys that are younger, I just think that's almost in some ways better for the health of the offensive line, right? Like, imagine if you had an offensive line where the average age was 33 to 37, you got to worry somebody's going to go down here and there, right? Where if you got guys in their 20s, you feel a little bit better about it overall from a longevity of them staying in for an entire season. I mean, that was the first thing that went off in my head. And then the second thing, I was like, Andrew Berry just played the Chicago Bears playbook here. He didn't go overspend. He went out and got quality starters that played on other teams and filled areas of, Ali would say, need. And then guess what we did? Now I don't feel so bad going in. I feel because of this and what we did, we have a lot more flexibility in the 2026 NFL draft now. I'm excited that you don't have to reach on a player because you need him, and you don't have to be as desperate for need because you just went and filled up a good portion of your problem. Now just go build it with some depth through the draft as well. I mean, left tackle is obviously glaring. We know that. But other than that, now you can build some depth. That's a good thing to have. Like, I was like, okay, I like this.
It's a requirement. It's a necessity if you are a serious organization to have that, to have youth and depth. I mean, that's the recipe right there for setting yourself up for the next 5 to 10 years, right? I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. You look at the Browns offensive line over the past couple of years, they peaked in like 2020, 2021, and obviously they got older and they did not get better. We were critical of this front office and not investing heavily into into not only the starters on the offensive line, but also the depth. I mean, how many times did we say on this podcast, man, okay, Jed's not it, figure something else out. And they just didn't. And now we're in this position where you essentially have complete turnover on the offensive line. And that's a really scary place to be. But I think that there is some optimism and there is some hope with some of these guys. I mean, I think you're going to put, I mean, if I had to guess what the offensive line looks like right now, you're probably going to draft a left tackle. That's probably what they're going to do, whether that's Monroe Freeling, whether that's CeCe Maui Noah, whoever your guy is, or whoever they decide to take in the draft. They're going to take a left tackle. The whole Joel thing, still kind of weird. Don't really know what that's going to look like, but let's just assume that he's back just for the sake of this. Well, then you've got Elton Jenkins at center. You've got Zion Johnson at right guard. And then you've got Titus Howard at right tackle. If Joel decides to, not come back, you also have Tevin Jenkins you could throw in there. You kind of this weird thing at right guard where you've got some of these guys that have had their best years at right guard. So it's like, okay, well, who gets the nod there? Who's going to be the right guard? So, but if I had to guess right here, right now, the current or the starting left tackle for the 2026 Cleveland Browns that's not currently on the roster, And we all kind of expected that. So I don't think that's a huge surprise. But you're right.
Yeah.
It does give some flexibility, right? To, if somebody falls to you or you have an opportunity to trade back where you can get some assets and maybe still get the player that you were eyeing. Maybe they love Monroe Freeling, but they don't want to get him at 6, but they can get him at 15 or whatever, right? And then, you can go get Denzel Boston or Jordan Tyson, at 24. I don't know. I'm just kind of obviously speculating what the later half of the first round is going to look like. But, maybe they do trade back and they can still get that guy, but also obtain some value. So
let me ask you this. Where does that leave DeJuan Jones in all this? Just curious.
Probably where we would want him to be. And that's kind of your swing tackle, right? Somebody that can come in the event that something happens. I mean, I like DeJuan. I think he's got really high upside. He just hasn't been able to put it together from health,
Right.
from a health standpoint. And that's not a knock on him as a player. I think obviously he still has to work some things out, but maybe he'll be in a competition, right, for left tackle. And maybe that's okay. Maybe if you are drafting somebody like Monroe Freeling, who's still going to be a little bit of a project, or Caden Proctor even, just throwing some names out there that maybe they'll be interested in, maybe being that they're a rookie, they'll have some competition at left tackle. Maybe that is DeJuan Jones.
Yeah, and we know this competition breeds better players at the end of the day. So, the best man's going to probably win in that situation. And, if it's the guy we draft or it's DeJuan Jones, but again, depth, at least you have depth at those positions where in the past we're kind of like, I'm trying to think of the guy that when Baker Mayfield met him in the locker room for the first time. What's that?
Blake Hance.
Yeah, Blake Hance is like, hey, Blake, nice to meet you. Keep me upright today, like literally as the game starts. So, I gotta. They were very methodical how they went about this free agency, right? I thought they were very precision, like, okay, check the boxes, don't overpay, boom. Like it just was very matter of fact kind of free agency, and I like that. Now, here's the one thing, and we'll address this soon, but this is the week that Andrew Berry always makes that fun little trade for wide receiver if he's going to do it in the National Football League. Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, this is the actual week. Typically, he's done that, so it'll be interesting to see if that happens because the other area of need is
if they were to do that. I mean, there has been some speculation floating around out there of some guys that are maybe looking for a new home. I mean, do you have anybody on your radar that you're like, hey, Andrew Berry, this kind of fits who Andrew Berry would want to trade for?
No, honestly, I mean, I know there's been the rumor about the guy from Jacksonville.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I mean, other than that, I don't think there's like a guy that's going to jump off the page and wow me.
The two that were being rumored about were Brian Thomas Jr. and Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison out of Arizona, correct? Well, let me tell you about that. That is interesting. So there's been debate: would the Browns be better suited to trade their second first-round draft pick for Marvin Harrison or take a rookie? And I think that is a really good debatable question because I think Marvin Harrison still has a lot of upside that we just
both of those. I mean, look at Brian Thomas Jr. 2 years ago. He had an insane, historic rookie season. And then last year he couldn't have been found, right? It was a really up and down situation. And Marv, while he was one of the best receivers that I have ever watched at the collegiate level, one of the best prospects that, we've ever really evaluated, it hasn't worked out in Arizona. Now, is it Arizona? Is it Marv? I don't know. So both of those guys are really hard to evaluate at this point in their career. And being able to put kind of a price tag on them and what their value is, because I think both of those guys have incredibly high upside, but they also kind of have a pretty low floor too, if we're looking at what they did this past year. So I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe we'll play a game here. Would you rather have this player versus some of these free prospects? But if we have time, we'll get to it. But I want to bring David on. We've got some things to talk about. Of course, we're going to talk draft. We're going to talk free agency. We're going to get into all of that. But before we do so, Dustin, why don't you tell our listeners about Primetime?
Yeah, guys, if you haven't been to Primetime, check them out at the Belden Village or Great Northern Mall or any of their other wonderful locations. By the way, this weekend, March 21st, Josh Cribbs, 12 to 1 p.m. Andre Thornton, the former big leaguer, is going to be there 2 to 3. And then speaking of Ohio State Buckeyes, Allie, Trayvon Henderson will be at the Belden Village Mall 5 to 6. That's right. All these guys will be at the Belden Village Mall. Come join us. I'll be down there. Josh Cribbs, Andre Thornton, and, of course, Trayvon Henderson are making that lineup. in the mall that Allie hung out most of her childhood in.
True. Also, we want to tell you about our good friend Crystal John Tony, guys. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, she's your girl over at eXp Realty. You can give her a call at 216-215-6663 or at johntonysales@gmail.com. She can help answer your questions, point you in the right direction. She's going to be a great guiding light through what can be a very stressful time in investing in or selling real estate. With that,
and as I say, with that, what is very unique about Northeast Ohio, they are valued as one of the best places now to buy a home, and value based on the median house price is 400 and some thousand across the country. And this area is under that. So this is actually a very great place to buy a home right now. So.
All right, there you go. All right, let's bring David on. Hi, David.
Hi, Allie. Hey, Dustin.
What's happening?
David, doctor, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Not a lot happening, just, the middle of the off season, and we're just figuring things out. But it's a beautiful Wednesday, and it's good to be back talking football.
Yeah, imagine if you could be just Max Crosby's doctor. No, just kidding.
A lot of pressure that comes with that.
Or not. Like, I mean, here's the thing. I don't know if anybody wanted that deal, but I think if I'm the Raiders, I'm pissed. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the details and ins and outs of it, but like, it's just weird because the Ravens knew that he had an injury and he had surgery, so I don't really know where things fell through and how that ultimately happened.
Yeah, I just find it very odd that you fly a guy all the way out there, which, by the way, I found out, and he even now is kind of clapping back. They flew him commercial into Washington, then made him drive 2 hours to Baltimore, and then all of that is happening. And he said the meeting was weird, like they started talking about his medical thing. And here's the thing. They were playing a 2-lane road. They had Henderson over here. They had Crosby in 2 lanes. And then when they had a deal set for Crosby, they knew Wednesday at 4:00 they backed out. I mean, you don't have a press release the very next morning like, oh, surprise, here's Henderson, locked and loaded. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, it was weird. Kind of a clunky, awkward, borderline nasty situation. But unfortunately, you can't really hold them accountable, because the weird thing about physicals and the medical aspect of each player is it's fairly subjective to each team. So there is not an umbrella across the board saying, hey, if they meet this criteria, they're eligible to play. Each team has essentially different criteria, David, what do you think about that? Like, do you think that there should be some kind of standard, or is it best to leave it up to the interest of each team?
I think probably like a combination of the two, truthfully. I think it'd be very, very hard to have a blanket standard for every situation, every diagnosis, and everything that kind of goes into it, just because every situation is so unique and so different. I think it would be too restrictive if we tried to do a blanket standard across the way, just because these are very subjective things. Like you said, the evaluation is subjective, and while an x-ray may show that this person is starting to show signs of arthritis, early arthritis, that doesn't mean that they can't be an athlete. They can't play and still do the things they want to do. And so I think if you would say anybody who has an x-ray showing grade 3 arthritis or worse, they are automatically disqualified, or there has to be this amount of evaluation. Or I think that's too restrictive. I think it's too authoritarian, because ultimately these are decisions that you're making based on the team needs and what you think your trainers can do for these players in terms of their rehabilitation, their recovery, their just approach to health in general. And so while maybe you can do it for this person had a broken bone or concussions, sure, but those are very objective things, very obvious findings and injuries. But when it comes to healing from a meniscus surgery, everyone's evaluation is slightly different. I mean, certainly there's wickets or goals that you can set and say, hey, you got to meet these things to make it. But I think every team is definitely different on that, because some people are willing to take more risk on recovery versus others aren't. Some people are willing to gamble on a guy who had an injury in college and then never panned out, versus other people are like, no, we're taking healthy guys only. If you had a season-ending injury, we're not going to draft you. So I don't think it's feasible to have a blanket standard across the NFL for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, the most ugliest part of that could have been really ugly, and the league might have had to get involved, is the fact that you had a team that had a lot of cap space and was signing players aggressively, that being the Las Vegas Raiders. And then when they rescind, and a player has to go back there could be some really cap implications from a huge financial situation for a club. I mean, imagine if that was a team other than the Las Vegas Raiders, for instance, that didn't have 90 some million dollars of cap space and had only 20, I mean, that could have been detrimental to an organization. I mean, it worked out, but it could have very easily not worked out in the Raiders' hand, because then you got players sitting there going, okay, now what? Are we going to be signed? Are you still keeping us? Like, that's what was crazy to me, is you left a lot of players in limbo on the Ravens side and the Raiders.
Yeah, it's really clunky. It's really awkward. I mean, and if that would have been another team, they may have been forced to have, found another trade partner if possible, which would have probably come with much less, draft capital, and it would have been an entirely different trade than what the Ravens were initially offering. But to just get that off the books, if that's what you were already planning for and had already started your free agency and pre-draft process, that it comes with some weight, as you mentioned, Dustin. But what a situation, and I'm just so glad that the Browns were not part of that in any capacity. It's what a disaster. What a disaster.
Yeah.
And just really bad optics for the Ravens. I'm not surprised that is the way that it went down, but just really ugly optics. All right, before we get into our next segment, I want to tell you about our good friends over at Stadium Mustard. Guys, if you don't have Stadium Mustard in your kitchen this season, you are doing it wrong. The iconic brand, the iconic taste, beloved from ballparks to backyards and everywhere in between. Stadium Mustard is a smooth brown mustard rich in both taste and tradition, and it is loved by millions. So be sure to head on over to stadiummustard.com to shop now.
And then remember the code, 20% off brownies at stadiummustard.com to get 20% off. Great deal.
There you go. So a couple of segments here that I want to kind of run through that I think would be fun as we look back on some of Andrew Berry's drafts, and as we kind of look back at really just looking back to last year. Dustin, you and I on this podcast, we came on here, and of course, we always have our hot takes for the upcoming season, some bold predictions, and some of them weren't far off, and obviously some are just completely insane now looking back at it. So I want to go back, step back in time, and play a segment of what are the biggest lies that we convinced ourselves of last season. So we'll go around the room here. We each have a couple. I'll start. My first one here is, obviously last year losing Nick Chubb felt like an enormous thing. He was no longer a Cleveland Brown. He was going to be going to the Houston Texans. So many people said, wow, the Browns are going to regret this mightily. They go out, they draft 2 running backs, Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson. Obviously, they still had Jerome Ford. So in our heads and on this podcast, Dustin, we talked about how big of a loss that would be, especially having lost Brian Callahan and what that was going to look like on the offensive line. However, that wasn't the case. It didn't really pan out the way that maybe we thought it was. So it didn't dramatically impact the rushing game. The rushing attack as a whole in 2025 for the Cleveland Browns, 1,649 total rushing yards. The rushing attack as a whole with Nick Chubb in 2024, 1,608. So actually, the Browns did better last season. Wow. So when we look at total, just the two compared, Quinshon in 14 games, 827 rushing yards. Nick last year with the Texans, obviously in a different role. Clearly, I'm not trying to, paint the two kind of against each other, but he had 526. So my point being, it was not the end all be all that we lost Nick Chubb. I love him. I want him to retire a Brown. I love the guy, but it didn't completely ruin. Wasn't the reason that the offense was so bad. Right. So that's my first one.
I mean, I'm totally with you there, because I think it's much more of an emotional factor, I think, for us than it was the what he brought to the table anymore. Certainly we were like, oh, he's coming, it's his second year off of that devastating knee injury. Maybe he'll be better. He'll bounce back even more. But I think more than that, it's exactly what you just said. Like, you want him to retire at Brown. Like, he was your favorite Brown for however many years he was here. And like, he was awesome. He embraced the city loved him. And so losing him, I think, was much more emotional, but there were still a lot of people out there saying like, they're going to regret it. They're going to have like such a big loss and impact. And I mean, the numbers don't lie right there. And so it's, I agree. It definitely is a lie that many people convince themselves of.
All right, David, what do you have?
So my first one kind of goes into the QB situation a little bit, and essentially that if you remember back when Miles went on Radio Row and was talking about asking for a trade and all this nonsense, and there was a couple of issues at hand of why he wanted to trade and why he didn't want to come back. One of them being just the deal that he wanted, the money that he wanted to get paid, but then the other one was not really knowing if the organization had a sense of direction, not knowing what they were doing at quarterback, and not sure that it was going to be something that was conducive to winning and something he wants to do, because he's now reaching the apex of his career, and it's probably all downhill from here, unfortunately. And not unfortunately, he's still gonna be a great player, but like, you're not doing what he did last year again. And so one of the things that convinced him to come back was that he said that he met with the front office, and that they assured him that they had a plan in mind. They had a track. They knew what they were doing at quarterback. They were getting it figured out. They were going to get their guy, and it was going to right the ship. And I don't think that was true. I don't think that they had the quarterback situation figured out. I don't think they had a plan. I don't think they knew what they were doing. They drafted 2 quarterbacks. So I think that was a big lie that we all kind of fell for, because relief, yes, Miles re-signed. That means that if Miles got convinced, then we can all be convinced that they know what they're doing. And quarterback is just the future is here. It's going to be here, and that was a lie.
Yeah, it was. It was. You're right.
Yeah. So for me, we talked about it for years on this show. And then when you lose a guy, devastated that we lost him, JOK. Mm-hmm. And then we go draft linebackers. And we talked on this show and said, well, Schlesinger, he's a good player. We hope he, blooms and turns into a great player. We don't know if he can wear the green dot and run the defense for the Cleveland Browns. And not only does he do that, he wins Rookie Defensive Player of the Year as a linebacker. So there was the lie that we all convinced ourselves of, in my opinion, that we were going to be weak at linebacker, and we're going to struggle. And my gosh, did Schlesinger say, here we go, Brownie show? Stop. You're wrong. I'm going to be your guy. Let's go. And that was a bright spot for the Cleveland Browns this last season. And so that was the biggest lie I think we all talked to ourselves in. Well, and most importantly, because JOK was such a great player, and to lose such a great player like him is a big loss. So we convinced ourselves to the lie that we're going to be devastated at linebacker position.
It was a loss, because if you can imagine what those two would have looked like together, but had JOK had been healthy, they probably wouldn't have drafted him. So we probably wouldn't have seen what that looked like. But also just a testament to Carson, obviously the player that he is, but what Jason Tarver's been able to do, and their ability to find guys in free agency that can come in and just do the job. I agree with you. I think that we thought that there was going to be a huge drop off, and there wasn't. Mm-hmm. So that kind of leads me to my next lie. And then that was that the Browns defense could kind of will you to a playoff spot, because we were all under the kind of influence of what David mentioned, that, okay, offensively, they'll be able to figure something out. They were able to convince Miles to come back. They're going to be able to be competent on offense. That was not true. So we convinced ourselves at the start of the season that the Browns defense alone could will you to a playoff spot if the offense is just kind of okay. And that just wasn't the case. Obviously, I mean, look at what you had. You had the defensive player of the year, Myles Garrett, who was also the all-time single season sack record holder in the same year, and then the defensive rookie of the year. And that combined wasn't enough to even have you sniffing a playoff spot. And that's just, a testament to how bad this offense truly was, because if they were even remotely competent, we probably would have been. So I don't think the lie is within the defense not being good enough to get you there. The lie was more or less in the notion that the offense was going to be even remotely average. So,
well, back to David, the big lie of the quarterback position being solved. Mm-hmm. If you don't have the quarterback position completely solved, you're not going to win more than 5 games. Right. 6 games if you're lucky. No matter what, not even if you have an elite defense out there. I mean, they can't score the touchdowns for you. I mean, they can intercept the ball and create turnovers, but they can't score 30 points a game for you, 25. They can't do that. So yes, we all bought into the big lie because the quarterback position just never got settled last year.
And I think a lot of these lies are going to go hand in hand, because there was one major issue last year, right? And that was the offense. So a lot of kind of what we thought going into the season was vastly different than what actually transpired. But Dustin, what else you got? You got any other lies?
I had running back position as well. That was the other one that I had, just like you. Because of the emotional attachment, we were worried that the running back room would be a huge hole no matter who we drafted, and we would see, basically Nick Chubb, blowing up and being this great player in Houston, and we'd be, like, oh, there we go, just another Browns thing to happen. But getting 2 running backs in this draft, but yeah, mine was running back. I was of the same belief. I think we're all like, well, that's going to suck. Who's out there that's going to be now? You know who I wanted, and I'll still stake my ground on that. That guy's going to be really good in the NFL, Ashton Genty. But we got Mason. We got Graham instead, which will obviously solidify that side.
Yeah. I mean, time will tell with those things. But, I mean, so far at face value, when you look at the running back position, we fared okay so far. Again, not a huge drop off there. David, you got any other lies?
Yeah, I got one that I think you alluded to earlier, and I think we'll probably get into in a different show. As we were kind of prepping tonight, we talked about it, but just kind of scratching the surface on Andrew Berry and that the lie pre-draft, and I know there's a lot of back and forth, but just kind of the idea that draft guru, draft genius, analyst genius, and we're really seeing, I guess, as the years go on, that like it's probably like most GMs, it's kind of like 50-50. There's lots of hits, but there's lots of swings and misses too. In particular, though, looking at the 2024 draft and like placing all this, or 2025 draft, excuse me, and placing all this kind of blind trust in him, and then goes out and gets not 1 running back, but 2, and not 1 quarterback, but 2. And not only 2 quarterbacks, but like 2 kind of mid to late round draft picks, and just very strange. Didn't pan out. And I get like, you're trying to find your guy. And at the time it's like, well, if you got other pieces kind of filled, you find a quarterback. But it's just looking at kind of the list of the last 3 drafts, like a lot of these names are like, where do these guys go? What are these guys doing? And so I think there's been, a pretty strong notion that he's been like a very good drafter. And like, while he may have great strategy in terms of maybe finding draft stock and moving pieces around, like the actual like analysis of players, I think, has not been as strong and compelling as we've all believed it actually is.
I agree with that. It felt that there wasn't a strategy because we wouldn't be having this conversation if he decided to take, Shedeur Sanders with the number 2 overall pick instead of drafting back or trading back, excuse me. Because I mean, that's kind of what we all thought was going to happen, that they would maybe trade back and see if they could still get him. I mean, they ended up with him, so it all worked out. But for this conversation, when you're really questioning his draft strategy, it's like, well, yeah, kind of worked out to where you could get a guy that you liked, but it was weird the way all of that happened. And like, why did you have to draft 2 running backs and 2 quarterbacks, especially when there were other positions of need, left tackle, which kind of brings me to my next slide before we move on to the next segment. And they're kind of 2 in 1. The first one being, and apologies, I said Brian Callahan earlier. I meant Bill Callahan, obviously. The first one being, if you recall, at the start of the season when Joel was contemplating retirement last year, one reason that he came back was because there was this conversation that it was going to get back to the Kevin Stefanski offense of like 2020, really that marriage between the pass and the run, and heavy formations and really just kind of confusing defenses, and getting back to what that looked like in those years. And if you remember, Jack Conklin, Joel Bitonio, these guys were really excited about that type of offense, and it did not happen. That is not something that we saw. In fact, like at all. When you go back and look at some of those percentages versus what they ran in 2020, it was vastly different. So that was one lie. But because of that, and the question mark around what they were going to be doing offensively, and kind of a question mark during draft strategy, it left a huge hole on the offensive line. And I think we kind of convinced ourselves that you can mix and match the offensive line and it will be serviceable. It'll be fine without Bill Callahan. And it was not. This was really bad. Obviously, you can blame health. Health was a very big concern for this offensive line, and you cannot control that. But being that there wasn't a more solid plan in place, I think is something that we bought into. And I even remember saying it, about Bill Callahan, like certainly that is a huge loss that he will not be returning to the Browns. But at the end of the day, he's a coach, not a player, right? He's not the one out there in pass blocking sets that's protecting whoever the quarterback was going to be at the time. So I don't know. I think that's something that we kind of bought in as a whole. And again, it just goes back to this bigger lie of it was just the Browns offense that was abysmal and that there was essentially no plan in place, but they sold us this kind of bag of lies, if you will.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what we're going to do with Dylan Gabriel. If that's part of a trade package for a wide receiver, I'd be all in for that. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. But, that's why there's a lot of people out there, and I'm in that camp that, man, if Shador can hit this offseason and win the job, a guy with that small of a salary for a couple of years, man, you can build some amazing weapons around him and do some amazing things. But that's yet to be. But I also think now, Allie, you've got me. I know David said no, and I said no, but I now think the Browns are going to draft a quarterback in 2026. I do. I'm telling you. I'm feeling it. They're doing top 30 visits with quarterbacks. And I'm not saying they're going to go pick like someone in the first round, but man, I will not be shocked if the Cleveland Browns draft a quarterback this year.
And I don't think that's necessarily a horrible strategy. When you're a quarterback needy team or a quarterback question mark team on, is this guy going to be our guy for the next 5 years? Well, we don't know yet. We hope, but we don't know. I don't think it's unreasonable to take somebody in later rounds almost every year because, when you go back and look at almost every single draft, there's probably 4 or more guys that didn't even last more than a season on that roster. So I don't think taking the Flyers is a ridiculous idea, but they haven't done anything yet in terms of free agency. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibilities, but
yeah, I can see them drafting one. But what's funny is, Al, you remember, well, it's been a year ago now, but remember when Nathan was at the combine and he talked to us about drafting quarterbacks. And after the first round, if you don't draft a quarterback, the percentages of that quarterback hitting drastically, the chances of that quarterback hitting go off. You go from 50-60% maybe in the first round to like the numbers just.
It's true.
And so it's almost like you're throwing a lottery pick in, like, hey, I want to win the Mega Millions. Maybe this quarterback will hit. So it's kind of weird, but those picks don't hit typically. So you're right. It is wonky that the Browns took a quarterback at the 3rd and the 5th round because it's like you already kind of knew that. Well, that's why you had Flacco, obviously. That made sense because you had the veteran in there. But you're like, okay, we're going to take a flyer on these guys just to see if they hit, right? Like that's the weird thing. And it was interesting with Nathan and the stats that he gave. If you don't draft again in the first round, how much those percentages go down that you actually won't.
It is drastic. And of course, a lot of those, when you say taking a flyer on a guy, obviously that also depends on circumstance. Certainly you can have all the talent in the world, but if it's a mismatch offensive line or a bad organizational structure, a bad offensive scheme for that specific player, all of it matters. Like we say, certainly Tom Brady, went to the Patriots and it worked out for him. But if it was another organization, maybe that would have looked differently. So circumstance does matter. I want to get into that game of, how would we fix the Browns? So let's turn it over to that. Before we do so, Dustin, why don't you tell our listeners about our good friends over at City Barbecue?
That's right, guys. If you haven't had City Barbecue, go check them out. 6 Northeast Ohio locations around here in the Cleveland area. Great for doing weddings, catering, or just you want to take home barbecue for the night, go check them out. And then also if you're down in the Columbus area or other parts of Ohio and enjoying this show, they're all over Northeast Ohio and Central Ohio as well. Check them out.
And if you're wondering, hey, where in the world can I get my official Here We Go Brownies podcast hat, t-shirt, sweatshirt? Head on over to We Bleed Ohio Apparel. They can do it there. They've also got some really great designs for football, basketball, baseball. They do it right. They can get you some really cool stuff over at We Bleed Ohio. So I like this segment. It's fix the Browns in 5 moves, or however many moves you have. So kind of the outline for this, and we won't go one by one. I want everybody to read their list, and then we can kind of discuss. But really want to focus on being semi-realistic. So I'm not asking you guys to say, hey, we're going to sign this player for $40 million over 2 years. No, just, obviously you can't say, oh, we're going to trade for Patrick Mahomes and we're going to go get Max Crosby. We're not going to do that. So semi-realistic, within the realms of what we think the Browns are able to do. I'm not going to hold you to it and hold you accountable if, maybe we don't have the draft capital or the cap space for it. But, kind of realistically, fixing the Browns in 5 moves. Now, when I say fixing, I don't mean forever. I just mean for the foreseeable future, maybe over the next 3 to 5 years, where they're continuously making a playoff push, maybe make it to a AFC championship game, or of course, winning a Super Bowl. What does that look like? David, I will let you go first. Give me your 5 fixes.
Okay. These are in no particular order, and like you said, this isn't a forever fix to like make this the best organization the NFL's ever seen. It's really just to see improvement over the next 3 to 5 years and make this a contender, make them a division winner and a playoff contender every season. I'm going to start out kind of at the top with quarterback. I think they need to figure out quarterback. I think we all know that. We've been talking about it. I mean, every show we bring it up, and I think my plan here would be figure out a way to trade for CJ Stroud. I don't know if you're going to be able to go find the guy right now in the league who's going to be the future of your team, the future of your franchise QB. But I think you can get a bridge guy. CJ is going into his 4th year, and while he's made the playoffs 3 straight years, I don't think Texans fans are totally super high on him, especially with how he did in the playoffs this year. Tons of turnovers. But that doesn't mean that he cannot turn it around. We've seen what he did at Ohio State. He's a very cerebral guy, but we know if he gets in his own head, like he does these things. And so he knows how to play in Ohio. He's familiar with Ohio. I think, giving up, either a late 1st round or a 2nd and a 3rd or some combination to get him, he's going to be someone who consistently gives you above average quarterback play. And I think that is something that if you have combined with this defense, you will make the playoffs. My second one is fix left tackle, whether that's through the draft, whether that's trading for someone similarly to getting CJ, fixing left tackle. And you're going to see a theme here in terms of kind of bolstering what we know is weak in my mind. And left tackle is it's your blind side, it's your protector. And right now we don't know what DeJuan Jones is going to be, what he's going to do. And it's the most important, position on the offense behind the quarterback. And so I think going and getting that figured out realistically, whether it's drafting a guy early or if you feel that those are more interior guys, then going and getting a free agent and trading for someone, fixing that position. And like I said, with a theme here, my third one, I was originally going to go with a different position, but I actually think really reinforce this offensive line because we've seen that is so important to success and bolstering the interior offensive line. Go get Jennings Dunker. Go get somebody who is, like all the tackles out there right now who they say, play more like a guard or a little bit more kind of inside guys, like go draft on them and really reset this because we've seen a mass exodus of what the core of this offensive line was, and it is no longer the same, and it needs to be reinforced further. We've had a lot of nice signings or trades or free agent signings over the last couple days or weeks, but I think continuing to emphasize that is really something that's going to turn this around and fix it. And then the other two, maybe a little bit more lofty, but I think really kind of hit more at the core of the organization. And I know some of these are going to overlap probably, but get Deshaun out of the building. Cut him. Cut your losses. Just be done with it. He didn't pan out. He's not going to pan out. And it's just, I think there's a lot of anxiety surrounding him still being on the roster. And I don't think it's conducive to winning. And I don't think it's going to really give this team the success they want. And then finally, probably the loftiest one of them all, but can be realistic, I think, in the next 3 to 5 years, although probably not with the new stadium, is new ownership. The Haslams are there. They put a lot of money into it, but it's just something always feels kind of off. And I think new ownership group selling the team to somebody who's a little bit more, I don't know even what you're looking for, but I think that would really make a big leap in changing things. But I also know it's probably the loftiest and most unrealistic of these 5.
Yeah, cool. I don't have a ton of pushback with those. I think I do have some overlap, so I'll just naturally go next here. But also just want to highlight this, Matthew. We do our best to get to the tangent. It is hard to do both at the same time, but appreciate you watching and commenting, of course. I will start, and again, in no particular order, but I do have my first one is the most important to me, and that is cutting Deshaun Watson. Eat the money. I don't care. Get him off the roster. Get him out of the building. There has just been bad energy, bad juju, whatever it is since that has happened. Get him out of here. I cannot wait for the day until I can see on an ESPN notification that the Browns got rid of him. David, are you paper or something again? What does that sound?
Do you hear it again? I was going to ask if it's bad or not. All right, I'll mute.
Okay. It's always towards the end of the show too. I don't understand. We got to get you some new AirPods. I think that's got to be it. But cutting Deshaun Watson, got to go. I think that helps in a lot of ways. Next thing I have is kind of a little bit what David was saying about the ownership situation, but I'm taking it a little bit of a step further, and that is just restructuring office. We saw a little bit of this in the, after the season, that what if Andrew Berry stepped into more of a CFO role, really managing the cap? We know that's something he's very good at, and manipulating money and making sure that the Browns are in a decent financial position. But one thing that he hasn't been so great on is evaluating and drafting players. He's had some big misses. Of course, this past year was pretty decent, but I mean, you heard us. We were also just critical. He just took 2 quarterbacks and 2 running backs. So it's like, I think that's where the big question mark is for Andrew Berry. So maybe have him step into a CFO type of role, and they bring in a GM that really just focuses on drafting and development. Next up is putting together a trade for somebody like Trent Williams. He's disgruntled in San Francisco. He's one of the best left tackles in the league. It would be a hefty price to go get him, but that solidifies that spot for the foreseeable future. Another guy, if you don't want to make a trade for him, Taylor Decker's interesting, right? The left tackle from the Lions. They've had an insane offensive line in recent years. Bring him back to Ohio. He's an Ohio State guy. I'd be interested in that, while still drafting somebody, right? And it's, maybe they're able to sit and kind of develop behind a veteran left tackle that still has a few more years to go. And then at that point, once you solidify the offensive line, then you're drafting the best available receiver. Maybe you stay at 6. You get Carnell Tate. You get whoever your guy is, Mekhi Lemon, whoever you guys like in the comments. I'm going to go with Carnell Tate. I think he's the best receiver in this draft class. So you take Carnell Tate, or you take the best available receiver. And then figuring out quarterback. I mean, certainly, guys, we're hopeful that it's Shedeur Sanders, but it's hard to tell, small sample size. So my free agent signing would have been, obviously he's not available anymore, but to fit this offensive scheme would have been Malik Willis. Bring him in as a competitive piece, see what he can do in this scheme, to make, he's got really high upside, maybe he can be the guy. And if not, of course, then we're in a position next year to take that guy. So that's kind of my how you fix it for now kind of thing. And the two biggest things, figuring out left tackle and getting Deshaun Watson off of this roster. What do you got, Dustin?
Boy, that was a lot. I took all that in. Took that all in. All right. So for me, make a trade for a wide receiver. So we can fix the wide receiver room. Let's bring in a starter. Let's make a trade. Andrew Berry, this is what you do. Just keep doing it. By the way, when you've made trades for the wide receiver, most of the time we've been on the positive side of it. So you're really good at doing trades that the guys come here. Amari Cooper, great example, how well that worked out here. With that comes losing draft picks. So for me, the solution then is you trade down in the first round, and you take still probably a left tackle, right? That's one of the needs I think you can fix, is that left tackle position. Bring in that left tackle, but then you got to get another asset back. So you trade down because of the pick you made with the wide receiver that you made. So then how do you fix just the quarterback room? Bring in a veteran quarterback. Bring in a Kirk Cousins. Bring in somebody. The irony, it was a Stefanski guy, but you bring in a veteran quarterback that if it isn't the right move, or the guy is not the right fit, you have a veteran quarterback that you can put in and stabilize the offense. And then, of course, for me, is build in the back part of the draft your offensive line. Go get some really good guys in the back part of this draft that can fill and put depth on this line in that position. And then fifth, I would just say collect draft picks. I would say we have lost so many draft picks in the past, is make some lucrative deals. And I'm not saying this, but I mean, if there is somebody calling and says Myles Garrett for 2 or 3 first-round draft picks, again, we proved that it only won 5 games. I'm just saying that actually would fix your team for a long time, because then you're getting a lot of assets in the future. And I only make that comment just because if somebody's that desperate and they're going to do it, you're kind of you almost have to do it. Like, okay, you're crazy, and even we'll do that. So,
David, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't I don't think you're wrong. We went three seasons without a first rounder, and so finding a way to like bolster it and get draft capital, I think, is a great way to build a team and organization. But I mean, you're losing a fundamental piece for sure. And like I said, we probably have seen him at the apex of his career, but he's still going to have 5 to 8 more fantastic seasons there. And I think this defense would look so different without him. And I just wonder, it's like a thing like we wouldn't know how good of a thing we had until it's gone, which I don't think any of us are thinking that because we know how good he is. But I see the point about getting draft capital, a lot of draft picks, but that one's a very, very big sell.
Well, what I mean is if you make the playoffs this year and you get to 8 or 9 wins, and then somebody comes calling for Myles Garrett and they offering you 3 first-round draft picks from 27 on, that's 27 to the new stadium. You know what I mean? Like you could build a hell of a team and go draft another defensive end in the first round and retool yourself again for a lot less price. I'm just saying that could be, this team is younger now and it's getting younger even more. What would that look like? I don't think it's, I love Myles Garrett. I want him to retire at Cleveland Brown. But if somebody called yesterday and said, we're going to give you 3 first-round draft picks, think about that. 3 first-round draft picks. That's insane.
I want to just mention the whole point of this exercise is to fix the Browns kind of immediately, right? It is getting this team better in the next now to 5 years. And listen, I hear you, but I agree with Jason. You do not trade a Hall of Fame player in their prime. That does not make you any better. Sure, it gives you assets to go get guys, but you're not going to replace Myles Garrett in the draft in the next 3 years with those first round picks. You're not. Have you seen the Browns draft?
Yeah.
I hear you. I understand the accumulation of picks, but that doesn't make you better. It kind of just stockpiles some things. And of course, it depends on where he goes, right?
I'll go the other way of that. We gave the Houston Texans 3 first-round draft picks, and we made them a perennial playoff team overnight. So, they took those picks and literally turned into a playoff team. You know what I mean? Based on doing that, for one star player.
But yeah, I guess it depends on where he would go. It depends. Right. That does matter because if he goes, to let's just say the Kansas City Chiefs, then you've got 3 first-round picks, but you're picking at 28 to 32 in the first round over the next 3 years. And that does not make you any better. You're not going to find Myles Garrett in the later part of the first round. You're just not. So to make the Browns better, while I understand the value of getting those assets, I'm with you on that. It's that it doesn't make this team any better than they currently are. But that's that. So there you go. There's our how to fix the Browns in 5 moves. That took a twist. But any closing thoughts as we wrap up here, guys?
No, I was just his sound threw me off there for a moment, made me giggle.
Oh, is it happening again? I'm sorry.
I heard it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, it's the AirPods." No, it's a good debate though, right? It's good fodder because literally, what pissed me off with the whole thing is, by the way, if you looked hindsight, what we knew and what we didn't know, most people in the league would tell you Deshaun Watson was a Pro Bowler before and a perennial top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And the Browns were getting that quarterback in 15 teams, along with the Browns were asking what it would take to get that player, right? And then we found out it had to be 3 first-round draft picks and a fully guaranteed contract. Nobody else wanted to do the fully guaranteed. And then, for me, they just took those 3 draft picks and were very precise with them. And they became a very good football team overnight. And that's where could that technically fix the Browns or fix, I think it could, just because it depends on if you hit on all those picks like the Texans did, you could be a very young, dangerous team. That's just kind of where and full disclosure, just not to labor this, but if you have 3 first-round draft picks, okay, say somebody calls the Browns at the end of the season and offers 3 first-round draft picks for the Cleveland Browns, okay? That's a lot. The 2027 draft is looking to be the cream of the crop for quarterbacks that are going in the National Football League. If you're the Cleveland Browns and you have 3 first-round draft picks, you own the draft in 2027. and maybe you get the quarterback of the future for the next 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, then you're like, holy crap. Yeah, we had to give up Myles Garrett, but now we have a quarterback we haven't been able to solidify for 30 years. You know, like, that's where I look at things like, you know, when you position yourself, it could be positioning yourself for a long time.
Yeah. David, you got anything?
I like this exercise. I like the two that we did. I think it's a really interesting way to approach the offseason and just look at like what's available, what's going on, and what our ideals are for the Browns and like what we think will fix them. I like getting the different perspectives, and I think it's a little eye opening just to see that we are all aligned for the most part in terms of offensive line, quarterback, wide receiver, and it's very clear we know what the needs are. And let's just hope that we can trust the leadership and those making the decisions up top, that they also see it.
It's always the issue, right? That's always the issue. It's some of these things seem so obvious, but at the same time, so far out of reach. It's like sometimes they just try to outsmart each other, and that just never works. Ego, you know. But all right.
You know, I told you I was all in on Josh Allen, and I thought they overthought it. And I was like, he's built for Northeast Ohio. He's big. He's strong. He plays in the snow. Like, come on, this is not too hard to figure out. Like, just take Josh Allen.
And they did. That easy. Just take Josh Allen, and then we're not even having this conversation. But that wraps it up, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, Browns fans, go Browns.